The specimen. Maya Chen had never planned on becoming humanity's representative to the stars. Then again, she hadn't planned on being abducted by aliens either. Life was funny that way. The night everything changed had been perfectly ordinary. Maya working late in the university's engineering lab. The only sound the soft clicking of her keyboard as she refined her doctoral thesis on adaptive neural interfaces. At 26, she was the youngest PhD candidate in the program's history, with a mind that professors called terrifyingly brilliant behind her back. The first sign something was wrong came when her coffee mug began to vibrate against the desk. Maya glanced up, expecting to see a fellow night owl researcher, but the lab remained empty. Then the air itself seemed to fold inward, creating a perfect circle of distortion that pulsed with impossible colors. "That's not good," she whispered, reaching for her phone only to find it floating alongside her pencils and notebook, gravity suddenly more of a suggestion than a law. The last thing Maya remembered before darkness claimed her was the curious thought that the light emerging from the distortion appeared to be breaking down into individual packets, like photons deciding to reveal themselves to the naked eye. When she woke, it was to the uncomfortable realization that someone had changed her clothes, replacing her jeans and MIT sweatshirt with a simple gray jumpsuit that felt like cotton but rippled like liquid metal when she moved. "Subject appears to be regaining consciousness," announced a voice that sounded like several people speaking in perfect harmony. "Vital signs within expected parameters for species classification. Human." Maya kept her eyes closed, listening. Multiple entities moving around her, speaking in a language that shifted between incomprehensible clicks and perfectly understandable English. Some kind of translation technology, she guessed. "Advanced. Commence preliminary cognitive assessment when stabilization is complete," the voice continued. "The director is particularly interested in this specimen." Specimen. That single word told Maya everything she needed to know about her situation. She was no longer a person to these beings. She was a subject, a test case, a curiosity. She opened her eyes. The chamber around her was a perfect hexagon, walls of some pearlescent material that seemed to glow from within. 3 beings stood observing her, and Maya had to focus to keep her expression neutral. The closest resembled a praying mantis crossed with a jellyfish, with translucent limbs that rippled with bioluminescent pulses. Beside it floated what appeared to be a cloud of metallic particles that somehow maintained a vaguely humanoid shape. The third was almost human-like, tall and slender with skin the color of burnished copper, and 4 arms that moved with hypnotic precision as it manipulated a holographic interface. Maya decided to call them Mantis, Cloud, and Copper. Names would make them less alien, less terrifying. "Cognitive functions appear intact," said Copper, 4 eyes blinking in vertical pairs. "Subject is processing its environment." "Can you understand us, human?" asked Mantis, its voice somehow coming from the pulsing lights within its translucent body. Maya considered her options: deny understanding and gather more information, or establish communication immediately. The scientist in her warred with survival instinct. Science won. It usually did. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady despite the thundering of her heart. "Where am I, and why have you taken me?" The 3 beings exchanged glances, or whatever passed for glances among species so different from her own. Remarkable. Cloud's particles shifted to form what might have been a smile. Direct inquiry. Most specimens exhibit fear responses before cognitive engagement. "Who says I'm not afraid?" Maya sat up slowly, noting the way her body felt lighter than it should. "I'm just practical enough to know that screaming won't help me understand what's happening." Her response seemed to please them. Copper's secondary arms made a rapid series of gestures that caused the holographic display to expand, filling with symbols that rearranged themselves continuously. "You are aboard the research vessel Empirical Truth, flagship of the Voidborn Imperium Scientific Division," Mantis explained. "I am Chief Researcher Zith Terra. These are my colleagues, Observation Specialist X447. Cloud vibrated slightly, and Biological Systems Analyst Krevan. Copper inclined its head. As for why you are here, continued Zethterra, you have been selected as a representative sample of your species for our comprehensive study of emergent intelligences. Maya processed this. You're saying I'm a lab rat. The translation seemed to confuse them momentarily before their systems adjusted. An imprecise analogy, said X447, particles reconfiguring. Laboratory rodents lack self-awareness. You are a sentient study participant. Did I consent to participate? Maya challenged, swinging her legs over the edge of the examination platform. Consent is a concept applicable to peer species, Krevan explained with what sounded like genuine patience. Your civilization has not yet achieved Tier 3 technological development. The Imperium's Charter of Scientific Advancement authorizes observation and limited interaction with pre-integration species. Maya filed that information away. There was a hierarchy here, rules that governed their actions. Rules could be understood, perhaps exploited. And if I want to go home, that option becomes available following study completion and memory adjustment. Zethterra's lights pulsed in what Maya interpreted as reassurance. The process is humane by your species' standards. Memory adjustment. They planned to wipe her mind before sending her back. Maya kept her face carefully neutral, calling on years of poker games with her brothers. How long will this study take? Approximately 1 standard solar revolution, replied X447. What you would measure as 1.3 Earth years, more than a year as their captive. Maya suppressed a shudder and focused instead on gathering information. Will there be others? Other humans? Your species exhibits sufficient diversity that multiple samples were acquired, Krevan confirmed. They are housed in separate research sectors to prevent contamination of individual behavioral studies. So she wasn't alone. There were other humans here, somewhere on this vessel or facility. That could be important later. What happens now? Maya asked, deliberately making her voice smaller, less confident. Let them underestimate her. Let them see what they expected to see, a primitive being, frightened but cooperative. Now, said Zethterra, lights pulsing with what might have been satisfaction, we begin primary integration. You will be transferred to your dedicated habitat, where baseline behavioral patterns will be established. The dedicated habitat turned out to be a mockery of a human living space, clearly designed by beings who had observed humans, but never actually spoken with one. The proportions were slightly wrong, the furniture almost but not quite familiar. It was like living in an uncanny valley apartment. The space was approximately 500 square feet, with areas designated for sleeping, hygiene, consumption, eating, and what they called recreational stimulation. The walls could become transparent from the outside for observation but appeared solid from within. One wall featured an interactive interface that Maya quickly realized was both her primary entertainment and her captor's primary method of testing her intelligence. Her first week passed in a blur of assessments, cognitive puzzles, physical examinations, and behavioral observations. Maya quickly recognized that she was being compared against some baseline they had established for human capabilities. They seemed pleased when she performed well, but not exceptionally. That was when Maya made her first strategic decision. She began to deliberately underperform on certain tests while excelling at others in an inconsistent pattern. She would solve complex spatial reasoning problems with ease one day, then struggle with simpler versions the next. She would demonstrate remarkable memory recall in the morning, then appear to forget basic sequences in the afternoon. Subject exhibits cognitive inconsistency typical of pre-integration species. She overheard Krevan telling a new researcher who had joined the team. Impressive potential limited by neurological inefficiency. Maya hid her smile. They were already creating justifications for the patterns she wanted them to see. By the third week, she had established a reputation as an intelligent but erratic specimen, cooperative, curious, but fundamentally limited by her primitive human neurology. Meanwhile, she was learning their language, not just the translated version, but the actual clicks, hums, and modulated tones they used among themselves when they thought she couldn't understand. It was during the 4th week that Maya met Zora. Unlike the other researchers, Zora entered Maya's habitat rather than observing from outside. Smaller than the others of Copper's species, with skin that shimmered between copper and gold and eyes that blinked in synchronized pairs, Zora carried herself with a nervous energy that set her apart from the clinical detachment of the others. "I am Zora Van Cree, junior researcher," she introduced herself, the familial connection to Cree Van evident in her name. "I have been assigned to your cultural integration studies." "Cultural integration?" Maya asked, genuinely curious. "To understand a species, one must understand how it thinks," Zora explained, setting down a case containing what appeared to be Earth artifacts. Books, small electronic devices, clothing items. These were collected during preliminary observation of your planet. Maya's heart leaped at the sight of a battered copy of Asimov's Foundation among the items. Books meant paper. Paper could be useful. "These are to make me more comfortable," she asked, playing the role of the grateful specimen. "They are to observe how you interact with your own cultural artifacts when removed from your natural environment," Zora corrected, but there was something in her tone. A hesitation, perhaps. "Thank you anyway," Maya said softly. "It's nice to have something familiar." Zora blinked all 4 eyes in what Maya was beginning to recognize as surprise. "You are expressing gratitude despite understanding that my purpose is observational, not compassionate." Maya shrugged. "Understanding someone's motives doesn't mean I can't appreciate the result." Zora stared at her for a long moment. "Fascinating. This suggests nuanced emotional processing beyond what our models predicted." She made a note in her holographic interface, then looked back at Maya with what might have been curiosity. "Do all humans think this way?" "We're as different from each other as you are from Zeth Terra or X447, Maya replied. "Maybe more so. Yet you lack the technological advancement that defines higher-tier civilizations." It wasn't a question, but Maya heard the unspoken curiosity. "Technology isn't the only measure of advancement," she suggested. "Or do the Voidborn Imperium believe that faster ships automatically mean better art or more compassionate societies?" Zora's bioluminescent patterns flickered rapidly, the equivalent of a surprised blink. "That is not a perspective I have encountered in my studies." Maya recognized the opportunity. This young researcher wasn't just studying her, she was engaging with her. And engagement could lead to connection. Connection could lead to trust. And trust, Maya knew, would be her way out of this cage. As Zora prepared to leave, Maya called after her, "Will you come back tomorrow? I'd like to learn more about your culture too." The junior researcher hesitated, then nodded. That would provide valuable comparative data. But the slight shift in her bioluminescent patterns told Maya that scientific curiosity wasn't the only reason Zora would return. That night, when the habitat lights dimmed to simulate Earth's diurnal cycle, Maya carefully extracted a thin metal filament from one of the electronic devices Zora had left behind. Too small to register on their security scans, but strong enough for what she needed. As she lay on her too-perfect bed, staring at the ceiling, Maya allowed herself a small smile. They thought they were studying her. They had no idea she was studying them right back. Their technologies, their hierarchies, their beliefs, and most importantly, their weaknesses. They had taken her from her home and put her in a cage because they believed humans were primitive, limited creatures to be studied and catalogued. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Observer. 3 months into her captivity, Maya had developed a daily routine that satisfied her captors while serving her own purposes. Each morning began with physical assessments that measured her strength, reflexes, and endurance, tests she deliberately performed at 80% capacity, establishing a baseline that would make any future feats seem impossible by their metrics. Midday brought cognitive challenges, administered through the interactive wall interface in her habitat. These ranged from simple pattern recognition to complex problem-solving scenarios designed to map human decision-making processes. Maya approached these with calculated inconsistency, brilliantly solving problems that revealed nothing useful about human capabilities, while struggling theatrically with those that might betray Earth's technological potential. But the afternoons belonged to Zora. The junior researcher had become a regular presence in Maya's life, ostensibly conducting cultural exchange sessions that would help the Imperium understand human social structures. In reality, these sessions had evolved into something closer to friendship, or at least the closest approximation possible between captor and captive. Your species places extraordinary value on individual choice, Zora observed during one such session, her four hands simultaneously manipulating holographic data displays while sorting physical artifacts Maya had created from materials in her habitat. It seems inefficient. Maybe by your standards, Maya replied, watching carefully as Zora's lower right hand adjusted the habitat's environmental controls. 4-digit access code, changed weekly. But individual choice drives innovation. When everyone thinks differently, someone eventually thinks of something new. The Imperium values innovation, Zora countered, her copper skin rippling with bioluminescent patterns that Maya had learned indicated mild defensiveness. Our technological advancement is impressive, Maya finished for her, but regimented. Your research protocols haven't changed in 300 years? Zora's patterns flickered in surprise. How could you possibly know that? Maya smiled innocently. You mentioned it last week when explaining why Zeth Terra rejected your proposal for modified testing parameters. This wasn't entirely true. Maya had actually gleaned this information from carefully observing the researchers' data tablets and piecing together fragments of their technical language. But attributing her knowledge to casual conversation was safer than revealing her growing comprehension of void-born information systems. Your memory is more consistent than our models suggest is typical for humans, Zora noted, making an entry in her personal data device. Only about things that interest me, Maya deflected. Ask me to remember sports statistics, and I'd fail miserably. This exchange exemplified Maya's strategy. Reveal enough to seem cooperative while concealing the true extent of her capabilities. The Voidborn researchers believed they were documenting human cognitive patterns. In reality, Maya was mapping the entire research facility through carefully orchestrated conversations and observations. She now understood that she wasn't on a ship as she'd initially thought, but on the Imperium's capital world, Voidhaven. The research facility was one small part of a vast scientific complex dedicated to the study of pre-integration species, civilizations the Imperium deemed technologically promising, but not yet advanced enough for formal contact. Earth, it seemed, had attracted particular interest after human radio signals revealed both remarkable technological progress and troubling social instability. The Imperium had been monitoring humanity for decades, debating whether to classify Earth as a potential future ally or a possible threat. The abduction program, or representative sampling initiative, as they called it, was a compromise. Study humans up close before making a final determination on Earth's status in the galactic community. What the Imperium didn't realize was that in Maya Chen, they had abducted perhaps the worst possible human for their purposes, a woman with an eidetic memory, engineering expertise, and a lifetime of solving puzzles just to prove she could. After each session with Zora, Maya would lie on her bed, eyes closed, mentally cataloging every detail she'd gathered. Security protocols, facility layouts, technological vulnerabilities, and most importantly, the complex social hierarchies that governed Imperium society. The Voidborn, she had learned, organized themselves into rigid castes based on both species characteristics and individual achievement. The three main species she had encountered, Zeth Terra's mantis-like archonids, Anx 447's particulate collective, and Krevan's copper-skinned Tellurians, formed the administrative core of the Imperium, with numerous auxiliary species serving specialized functions. What fascinated Maya most was the quasi-religious reverence they held for technology. Advancement wasn't just a practical matter, but a moral one. Species were judged worthy or unworthy based primarily on their technological achievements rather than their cultural, artistic, or ethical development. This explained their dismissive attitude toward humans. Despite Earth's remarkable progress in the past century, humanity still lagged centuries behind the Imperium in key areas like faster-than-light travel, energy generation, and material science. It also explained why Zora was considered something of an outlier among her peers. During their sessions, the young researcher had revealed an unusual interest in what she called non-quantifiable advancement metrics, art, philosophy, social structures, that most Imperium scientists dismissed as irrelevant to a species' cosmic significance. "Your music particularly confuses my colleagues," Zora confided during their 4th month of sessions. "They cannot understand why humans would develop 12 different tonal systems when one optimized system would be more efficient." Maya laughed. "Because beauty isn't about efficiency. Bach and Beyoncé aren't trying to accomplish the same thing." Bach and Beyoncé, Zora repeated, the unfamiliar names causing her luminescent patterns to swirl in concentration. "These are significant cultural authorities. They're artists," Maya explained. "Musicians who move people in different ways during different eras. That's what my species values, not just technological progress, but emotional resonance. Connection." Zora's 4 eyes blinked in vertical pairs, a gesture Maya had come to recognize as deep consideration. Perhaps this explains why human cultural artifacts show more variation than would be optimal. Optimal by whose standards? Maya challenged gently. "By." Zora paused, her patterns shifting to indicate uncertainty. "I suppose by Imperium standards." It was these moments of doubt that Maya carefully cultivated, small cracks in the absolute certainty that defined Imperium thinking. Every question she raised about their assumptions was a seed planted, one that might later bloom into the ally she would need. Meanwhile, Maya's understanding of Imperium technology grew daily. The interactive wall in her habitat provided an ideal training ground. While appearing to engage with their designated programs, she was actually probing the system architecture, identifying patterns in their coding language, and gradually developing what amounted to a rudimentary hacking methodology. The breakthrough came during her 5th month of captivity, after a particularly intense session of what the researchers called advanced cognitive mapping. Essentially a series of multidimensional puzzles designed to measure human spatial reasoning. Maya had deliberately maintained a consistent success rate of 67%, high enough to maintain their interest, but low enough to avoid special scrutiny. But during this session, she discovered something unexpected. A processing lag in the system whenever she performed a specific sequence of interactions. That night, after the facility entered its lower activity cycle and monitoring was reduced to automated systems, Maya sat cross-legged on her bed, facing the interactive wall. The lag she had discovered suggested a potential buffer overflow vulnerability, a programming weakness as old as computing itself, yet apparently still present in even this advanced technology. "All systems have weaknesses," she whispered to herself, recalling her cybersecurity professor's favorite axiom. "The question is finding the right one to exploit." Over the next 4 hours, Maya systematically tested the vulnerability, using the small metal implements she had painstakingly collected and hidden throughout her habitat. A filament from an electronic device served as a stylus of sorts, allowing her to input commands with greater precision than her fingers alone. Just before the facility's day cycle was set to begin, the screen flickered, then displayed text in the Imperium's primary scientific language, a language Maya had been secretly learning through her sessions with Zora. "Access Garantiti. TRTA systems only. Security protocols active." Maya quickly closed the unauthorized access portal before it could trigger security alerts, her heart pounding with both triumph and caution. She had found a way in, but it was limited and heavily monitored. Using it carelessly would alert the facility's security systems immediately. But she didn't need unrestricted access. Not yet. She just needed information, and now she had a source beyond her captor's carefully curated presentations. Over the next several weeks, Maya employed her newfound access sparingly and strategically, gathering critical intelligence during the facility's lowest monitoring periods. She learned that the research complex housed approximately 150 human specimens in segregated habitats, each studied for different aspects of human capability. She discovered that the facility itself was divided into 7 sectors, with her own habitat located in what they call the Cognitive Assessment Wing. Most importantly, she uncovered the existence of the Adaptive Integration Protocol, the Imperium's established process for incorporating new species into their galactic community. This protocol included a set of criteria that, if met, would legally require the Imperium to recognize a species' sovereignty and right to self-determination. The primary criterion was straightforward yet seemingly impossible. Demonstrate mastery of Tier 3 technology, which included faster-than-light communication, gravity manipulation, and quantum computing. Earth was centuries away from these achievements by traditional development timelines. But Maya wasn't thinking about Earth's timeline anymore. She was thinking about what one human with access to Imperium knowledge might accomplish. Her planning was interrupted one afternoon when Zora arrived for their session, visibly agitated, her bioluminescent patterns flashing in what Maya recognized as the Tellurian equivalent of distress. "What's wrong?" Maya asked, setting aside the cultural artifact she had been examining, a simple Earth puzzle cube that the researchers found endlessly fascinating. "The Directorate has accelerated the human assessment timeline," Zora said without preamble, her 4 hands moving in nervous patterns. "There is disagreement about Earth's classification." Maya kept her expression neutral despite the alarm bells ringing in her mind. "What kind of disagreement?" "Some believe your species' technological progress, while impressive in speed, has outpaced your ethical development," Zora explained, lowering her voice despite the privacy field she had activated upon entering the habitat. "They advocate for classification as a monitored potentially hazardous development." "And what does that classification mean for Earth?" Maya asked, though she suspected she already knew. Zora's patterns dimmed, the equivalent of a grimace. "Technological containment. The Imperium would deploy countermeasures to limit further advancement until proper ethical frameworks could be established. They would deliberately hold back human progress," Maya clarified, struggling to keep the anger from her voice. "For how long?" "Until deemed appropriate, perhaps several centuries." The implications were staggering. The Imperium possessed technology capable of subtly sabotaging Earth's scientific development, keeping humanity contained and controlled without ever revealing their existence. "And the alternative classification?" Maya pressed. "Candidate for limited integration," Zora replied. "It would mean controlled knowledge sharing, guided development, some autonomy, but under Imperium supervision." Neither option was acceptable. Both meant the end of humanity's independent development, decided by beings who understood human technology, but nothing of human spirit. "When will this decision be made?" Maya asked, mind already racing through possibilities and probabilities. "The final assessment report is due in 60 cycles," Zora said, approximately 2 Earth months. "Director Zeth Terra's recommendation will carry significant weight." Maya nodded slowly, processing this information while maintaining her carefully crafted persona of concerned but cooperative specimen. "I see. Thank you for telling me." "I should not have," Zora admitted, patterns shifting to indicate conflict. "But I believe you deserve to know what is being decided about your species." It was the opening Maya had been waiting for, the first explicit acknowledgement from Zora that she viewed Maya as more than just a research subject, that she saw her, perhaps, as a person with rights. "Zora," Maya said carefully, "in all our sessions, you've been studying what makes humans different from the Imperium. But have you considered what makes us similar?" The young researcher's patterns shifted to a questioning configuration. "Similar? Our species evolved in different environments, under different evolutionary pressures. Yet we both value knowledge. We both seek to understand the universe, Maya pointed out. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we both believe that decisions should be made with input from those most affected by them. Zora was silent for a long moment, her pattern cycling through complex emotions Maya couldn't fully interpret. Finally, she spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. There are those within the Imperium who question our approach to pre-integration species, a minority, but growing. Her four eyes fixed intently on Maya. Some believe true advancement comes not from technological superiority, but from diversity of perspective. It was as close to a political confession as Zora had ever made, an admission that the Imperium's consensus wasn't as absolute as it appeared. Maya recognized it for what it was, not just information, but an offering, a potential alliance. Then perhaps, Maya suggested gently, there's more I could share about humanity than what your tests are designed to measure. Zora hesitated, then made a decision. From a compartment in her research equipment, she withdrew a small device that Maya recognized as an unrestricted data tablet, different from the limited interface she was permitted to use. Cultural exchange should be bidirectional to be valid, Zora said, the formal phrasing barely concealing the radical nature of her action. This contains restricted information about Imperium society and technology. It's configured for human visual processing and will deactivate automatically if removed from this habitat. Maya accepted the tablet with steady hands, careful not to reveal the surge of triumph she felt. Thank you. I'll treat this knowledge with respect. After Zora left, Maya spent hours absorbing everything the tablet contained. Knowledge about Imperium history, political structures, and most crucially, technological principles that human science had yet to discover. The tablet didn't contain engineering schematics or specific formulas. Zora wasn't reckless enough to provide that level of restricted information, but it offered conceptual frameworks that filled critical gaps in Maya's understanding. As the habitat lights dimmed for the night cycle, Maya placed the tablet in its hiding place and lay back on her bed, staring at the ceiling with a mixture of determination and newfound hope. The Imperium had given her 2 months before they decided humanity's fate. She would only need one. The infiltrator. The Imperium research facility operated on strictly regulated cycles, precisely calibrated periods of activity and rest that reflected the mixed physiological needs of its multi-species staff. For Maya, these predictable patterns were invaluable. The quietest period came during the third phase of the rest cycle, when even the night shift researchers retreated to monitoring stations, leaving most corridors empty and security systems on their automated routines. It was during this period, exactly 1 week after receiving Zora's tablet, that Maya made her first excursion beyond the confines of her habitat. The vulnerability she had discovered in the interactive wall system had been just the beginning. Using the conceptual frameworks from Zora's tablet, Maya had identified a fatal flaw in the Imperium's approach to security. They had built safeguards against their own forms of thinking, but nothing that anticipated human ingenuity. Their bioelectric lock systems, for instance, were designed to detect the unique neural signatures of authorized Imperium species. What they failed to account for was that these signatures could be recorded and replayed using the right combination of conductive materials. Materials Maya had painstakingly harvested from her enrichment objects. Never underestimate a determined engineer with too much time on her hands, Maya muttered as she placed her improvised device against the habitat's interior access panel. The panel recognized the simulated bioelectric pattern as belonging to a maintenance-level arcanid. The door slid open with a soft hiss that seemed thunderous in the quiet corridor beyond. Maya paused at the threshold, heart pounding. This was the moment of truth. If her understanding of the security protocols was flawed, alarms would trigger immediately. If not, she stepped through the doorway. No alarm sounded. The corridor remained dimly lit and silent. Maya allowed herself a brief smile before refocusing on the task at hand. This first excursion had 3 objectives: confirm the facility layout she had mentally mapped, locate the central data processing hub, and return undetected. Success tonight would lay the groundwork for everything that followed. Moving with deliberate care, Maya navigated the curved corridors of the research wing. The facility's architecture followed the Imperium's aesthetic preference for mathematical precision. Intersections always occurred at perfect 120-degree angles, creating hexagonal patterns that were both efficient and symbolic of their societal structure. Maya had calculated that she had approximately 42 minutes before the security system's next automated sweep, plenty of time if everything went according to plan. The first real challenge came at the transition point between the research wing and the central facility hub, a security checkpoint that required both bioelectric authentication and visual confirmation. Maya pressed herself against the wall around the corner from the checkpoint, considering her options. The solution came from an unexpected source. Down a perpendicular corridor, a maintenance drone emerged from a service conduit, one of the automated systems that kept the facility functioning. These drones, Maya had observed, moved freely through all sections of the facility without triggering security protocols. Timing her movement carefully, Maya slipped into the service conduit moments after the drone exited. The passage was cramped, designed for mechanical workers rather than biological beings, but navigable. It smelled of ozone and the peculiar metallic tang that seemed to permeate all Imperium technology. The service network proved to be Maya's greatest discovery yet, a parallel circulatory system for the facility that bypassed most security checkpoints. Through these hidden arteries, she moved deeper into the complex than she had dared hope on her first venture. 26 minutes into her excursion, Maya found what she was looking for: the central data processing hub, the brain of the entire research facility. From a maintenance access point, she observed the massive crystalline structures that served as the Imperium's equivalent of server farms, pulsing with energy that made the air itself vibrate. More importantly, she identified the access terminals and security measures protecting them, information that would be crucial for the next phase of her plan. With time running short, Maya retraced her path through the service conduits, returning to her habitat with 7 minutes to spare before the automated security sweep. As the door slid shut behind her, she allowed herself a moment of exhilaration before methodically disassembling her bioelectric mimic device and hiding the components in their various concealment spots throughout the habitat. Then she lay on her bed, eyes closed but mind racing, planning her next move. Over the following 3 weeks, Maya established a pattern of nocturnal exploration, each excursion more ambitious than the last. She mapped the research wing in its entirety, located 6 other human habitats, though security measures prevented contact with their occupants, and most critically, gained access to increasingly sensitive information through carefully orchestrated incursions into the